Oh God, Dane.
Hello and welcome to Who Is Best, a show that covers games long after people give a shit. This brings me to Eiyuden Chronicles 100 Heroes, a game where you can recruit, 100 party members, 71 of which you can take into battle with you. I'd like to thank Patreon member Survives Shipwrecks for requesting this list and also giving me the time to play and research this title. Now this list took weeks to research because of how characters are built. You have the normal stuff like stats, equipment, and range, but you also have rune slots where you can equip passive skills, stat enhancing runes, magic, and more. Of all the runes, the most important are the Mage and Warrior's Pinnacle and the Mage and Warrior's Path. Without getting into too much detail, these runes will double the attack or magic attack of a party member, turning them into the best damagers in the game. So when considering damage dealers, this capability will be at the top of the list. But that doesn't mean it's the only requirement. I've considered every angle here and will now, without further ado, present to you who is best in Eiyuden Chronicles 100 Heroes. Oh, just a note, I'll be moving pretty quickly through these since there are so many. Also stick around to the end for the optimal party and a bonus list. The tier. At no point in the game does Faye offer any kind of usefulness other than stealing items, which is useless. Dr. Cork has terrible stats and rune slots. He's really only here to collect Bagoma. Periel has abysmal stats, making all of her other utility useless. Even as an off-party support, she's easily outpaced by others. With the worst stats in the game, Yelu's only plus is she can blind enemies, which isn't even close enough to getting her out of the tier. The low tier. Yume takes up 2 party slots and has worse stats than most single slot characters. Girin has the slots of a mage, but not the stats. Marius has a useless self buff and terrible stats and rune slots. Paul doesn't have a single stat that is above average, and even with his golem boosted attack, still manages to do less damage than normal characters. Bernard is statistically one of the worst characters in the game who also happens to have terrible rune slots. Ivy is almost as bad as Paul with slightly redeemable strength and rune slots towards the endgame. Jujina should have been the strongest character in Eiyuden Chronicles, but instead he's statistically useless. Leon might be a controversial placement. You can place him higher, but overall his magic is just way too low in the endgame. Reed's recruitment is locked behind the worst mechanic in the game, and he's easily passed up by most other long-range characters. If Milu didn't have above average strength and armor, he would have landed in the tier with his sister. Prunella has high strength, but a magic-based weapon, which makes absolutely no sense. Calathor is a statistical nightmare with a decent healing skill. If Yorhan had better rune slots, he could have landed in the mid-tier. Speaking of, let's move on to the lower mid-tier. Ryufan only landed in the lower mid-tier due to his ability to inflict paralyze and the fact that you need him in order to recruit Lamb. Marin and Weiler are both decent early game characters, with Marin's support extending into the mid game as well. Lilwyn has terrible stats but above average rune slots, which makes her a decent support mage. The only good thing you can say about Zabi is that he has an above average magic stat. El Elicanto is recruited late in the game and is only good for rare item hunting. Foxiel is an average recruit, recruited in late game. Euthus is your earliest tank, but due to terrible magic defense, he falls off as soon as you gain Reyna. Francesca, despite what the internet would have you believe, is not a good character. She's a slow mage with a halfway decent combo with Forward. Carrie is a better Lilwyn with better stats and rune slots. Kogan can be a high damager, but his unique rune is a bit of a gamble, meaning that half the time it will do terrible damage. Forward is slightly better than Francesca, but both of them are low tier if they aren't in the party together. If Valentine could equip Pinnacle or Path, he'd be better than Sabine. Unfortunately, he's just average. Maxime is a decent tank if you have an all-female party, but he's recruited last and doesn't have many other uses. Hildy makes for an average support unit, relegated to being used only when required. With better rune slots, Scarlet could have placed much higher on this list. Vieskin is one of the final party members you recruit, and has awesome synergy with other party members as well as decent rune setup. He can also buff attacks. Alior has the highest stats in the game, but takes 2 party slots and her stats have no focus, making her less useful than a single slot party member. Shixin has a good defensive buff and great attack stat, but has terrible rune slots. Lakian is similar to Shixin, but is recruited late and again has terrible rune slots. Melridge could have been great. He has awesome stats and overall makes for a good mage, but his slots are abysmal. Alright, that wraps up the lower mid tier. Let's move on to the upper mid tier. From this point forward, every character is a viable party member. Quinn is a weaker lamb with good rune slots and high single target damage. Alway has average stats but great rune slots and an AoE damaging skill similar to Lean's. Cilia has balanced stats and great rune slots, making her a viable damage dealer. Rudy has one of the highest attack stats in the game and can just barely equip Pinnacle. Hakugen is one of the best support units in the game as she has the highest speed of any character. This means she can use the absolutely busted items to great effect. She also has decent AoE damage but terrible slots. Chandra is the only viable 2-slotted party member as she has the best attack of all of them. She can become a rather devastating DPS but still might not be worth 2 entire party slots. Yusuke is the single best character in the early to mid game. Optimally, there is just no reason to not use him until you acquire Pinnacle and Path. Galdor is a slightly statistically better Yusuke who also possesses the unique charge ability. Eupharius is the best charge character in the game, but all 3 of these party members will fall off in usefulness in the late game. Kuroto is one of the better long-range characters, only surpassed by party members like Lam, Aoi, or Neil. Marcus would be higher on this list if his unique runes didn't cost so much. With that being said, he is comparable to broken mages like Momo or Isha. Garo is a late bloomer capable of equipping Warrior's Pinnacle. You just need to level him up first. Aoi is better than Kuroto because of her god tier strength stat. If she had rune slots similar to Nil, she'd be top tier. The only thing holding CJ back from greatness is her terrible stats. She has some of the best rune slots in the game though. Wave is one of the most versatile characters in Eiyuden Chronicles, really only surpassed by Noah or Lean. Sabine has great defense and offensive stats, and can also equip Path, but there are other characters that are objectively better. Gar is a better version of Garou with awesome stats and rune slots. Mio is terrible through 90% of the game, but rockets up to one of the best non-path damage dealers in this title. Her unique skill Edo Strike not only crits for incredible damage, but can also insta-kill enemies, including bosses. Dijkstra? Dijkstra is in the upper mid tier for a single purpose. He has the best physical attack buff in the game. Slap him onto a physical team and spam his ability to put out some of the highest damage in this title. Malor is an amazing mage whose only fault is that she can't equip Mage's Pinnacle or Path. That being said, she has one of the highest magic stats in the game and decent fixed runes. Milana, similar to Malor, is only held back by the fact that she can't equip Pinnacle or Path. But aside from Momo and Isha, she's one of the most versatile mages in the game and makes for a great support unit. Sane is the worst of the 3 heroes. Ultimately, this comes down to damage output. Though he has awesome rune slots, his average stats just hold him back from greatness. Leanne has great stats, range, and rune slots, making her an awesome character. Electra, though the second to last character you can recruit, is an absolute beast. She's a better version of Leanne. Alright, let's move on to some of the best characters in the game with the top tier. Nil has amazing stats and amazing rune slots. In the endgame, you'll be hard pressed to find a better long-range tank. She also has a superb AoE attack. Marissa is the 3rd best mage in the game. Thrown into the back row and given Pinnacle, she will be unstoppable. Noah's real downfall is he's not the best at anything, but he's almost the best. He can be an awesome physical damage dealer, an awesome mage, and even a halfway decent support unit. Unfortunately, there are just better party members. Isha may not seem like the 2nd best mage in the game, but with her decently high stats coupled with her amazing rune slots, she's the only mage that can even come close to competing with Momo. Reyna is the only viable tank in the game. She both covers and counters enemy attacks, protecting your damage dealers from being wiped out. Because of her insane defensive stats, she's nearly unkillable and becomes a must-have for any endgame team. The God tier. There are 3 members of the God tier, which make up the best characters in this title. First up is Yugo. He's the first party member you recruit and the single best frontliner in Eiyuden Chronicles. He has amazing tanking abilities as well as the highest attack stat in the game. There's absolutely no downside to this guy. Next up is Lam, who is a back row Yugo with the single best self buff in this title as well as the highest attack stat. She is the best path user in Eiyuden Chronicles. The final member of the God tier is Lean. Sure, Lean's the final character to be recruited, and sure, her stats are okay. But considering her devastating AoE damage and the best rune slots of any character in the entire game, she can't land anywhere but here. The Broken tier. Yes, my friends, there is a broken tier. Momo is a freaking weirdo that likes to dress like a little girl. He's also one of the best mages of any RPG I've ever played. Momo's unique rune can increase his magic by 30% while having the rune slots to equip both Pinnacle and Path, making him the highest damage dealer in the game, no questions asked. Now, as for best party members, there are a few ways you can go. Yugo, Lamb, and Momo should be your Pinnacle and Path users, with support from Reina as they will be vulnerable to single target damage. The other two party members should probably be support units such as Isha, Noah, or Milana. Or you could just throw all your best runes on Lean and make her an enemy busting machine. And there you have it, my tier list for Eiyuden Chronicles 100 Heroes. I'd like to thank my Patreon members for their support, and a special thanks to Survive Shipwrecks for requesting this list. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you all later. Bonus list. Top 10 subjectively best characters in the game. Number 10, Gigina. Number 9, Nil. Number 8, Yugo. Number 7, Carrie, who has the best dialogue in the game. Number 6, Hakugen because of boobs. Number 5, Yusuke. Number 4, Aoi. Number 3, Mio. Number 2, Eupharius the 7th. And number 1 is Lamb, who is just a hotter Genkai.